Kang Tae stood in his small room on the starship horizon and stared at the glowing message on his screen. He read it 3 times. Then he read it again. The words did not change, but they still did not make sense to him. He had been invited to a wedding, an alien wedding, a Valari wedding. No human had ever received such an invitation before. The Valari were famous throughout the galaxy for many things. They were brilliant. They were ancient. They had built ships that could cross the stars when humans were still learning to make fire. But they were also famous for something else. They did not like humans very much. Tai remembered his training. His teachers had explained that the Valari found humans to be loud, messy, and emotional. They called humans the unstable species in their own language. It was not meant as a compliment. The Valari valued logic above all things. They made decisions based on calculation, not feeling. They viewed human emotions as a kind of disease that made people do foolish things. So why would they invite a human to their most sacred ceremony? Tay sat down on his bed and rubbed his face with his hands. He was 29 years old. He worked as a cultural liaison officer, which was a fancy way of saying he helped humans and aliens understand each other. It was usually boring work. He attended meetings. He wrote reports. He explained to aliens that humans shook hands as a greeting, not as a threat. This was different. This was terrifying. His door chimed, and Captain Yuna's voice came through the speaker. Tay, I need you in the briefing room. Now. Tay stood up and straightened his uniform. He walked through the metal corridors of the horizon until he reached the briefing room. Inside, Captain Yuna was waiting with 3 other officers. They all looked at him like he had grown a second head. You saw the message, Captain Yuna said. It was not a question. Yes, Captain. Do you understand what this means? Tay thought about it. It means the Valari want me to attend a wedding on their homeworld. Captain Yuna smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had a very big problem. It means we have a chance to improve relations with one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. The Valari have ignored humanity for 200 years. They think we are children playing with technology we do not understand. But now, for some reason, they have extended an invitation. To you. Tay felt his stomach twist. Why me? One of the other officers, a man named Lieutenant Park, pulled up a file on the main screen. 3 months ago, you resolved a dispute between Valari traders and a human mining company. The Valari ambassador sent a report to his government. He said you were quiet, respectful, and did not waste words. He said you were almost acceptable for a human. Almost acceptable, Tay repeated. That is high praise from them. The highest, Captain Yuna said. The wedding is for the daughter of a High Council member. If you attend and do not embarrass humanity, it could open doors that have been closed for centuries. If you fail... She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Tai understood. If he made a mistake, if he offended the Valari in some way, it could damage relations for generations. No pressure at all. I will do my best, Captain, he said. Your best is not good enough, Captain Yuna replied. You need to be perfect. The Valari do not forgive mistakes. They remember everything. They hold grudges for 1,000 years. Tay nodded. He did not trust himself to speak. For the next 2 weeks, Tay did nothing but study. He read every file about the Valari that he could find. He learned about their history, their culture, their biology. The Valari were tall and thin, with silver skin that reflected light like metal. They had markings on their bodies that glowed with soft light. These markings changed color based on their emotions, though most Valari had learned to control them completely. He learned about their weddings. Valari bonding ceremonies were not like human weddings. There were no priests, no vows, no rings. Instead, the couple performed a sacred dance called the Rathani. This dance told the story of their commitment without any words. Every movement had meaning. Every gesture was precise. A single mistake could ruin the entire ceremony. Guests were expected to watch in complete silence. They were not allowed to clap, cheer, or make any sound at all. At the end, there would be a feast and then a communal dance where all guests participated. Tai practiced the basic Valari movements alone in his room at night. He felt foolish, waving his arms in the air while looking at instructional videos. But he kept practicing anyway. His grandmother had taught him to dance when he was a child. She said dancing was the language of the soul. He wondered what she would think of this alien dance that seemed to have no soul at all. The night before his departure, Tay could not sleep. He stood at the window of his quarters and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the darkness, was Valara Prime, a world of crystal and logic, a world where emotions were weakness and silence was strength. He thought about his grandmother again. She had been a dancer in her village when she was young. She told him stories about how she met his grandfather at a festival. They danced together until the sun came up, laughing and stumbling and falling in love. It was messy and imperfect and beautiful. The Valari would probably find it disgusting. Tay smiled to himself in the darkness. It was a nervous smile, the kind he always made when he was scared. The Valari thought smiling was strange. They did not understand why humans showed their teeth when they were happy. They said it looked like a threat display from a primitive animal. Maybe they were right. Maybe humans were just clever animals pretending to be civilized. Maybe the Valari were correct to look down on them. But Ty's grandmother had also taught him something else. She said that emotions were not weakness. They were power. Love made people brave. Fear made people careful. Joy made people strong. The heart was not the enemy of the mind. They were partners. Tai did not know if the Valari would ever understand that, but he was going to try to show them anyway. He turned away from the window and finally went to bed. Tomorrow he would travel to an alien world. He would attend a wedding where he did not belong. He would try not to embarrass his entire species. No pressure at all. The shuttle dropped through the clouds and Tay saw Valara Prime for the first time. His breath stopped in his chest. The planet was made of crystal. Not all of it, of course, but enough. Great towers of clear and colored crystal rose from the ground like frozen music. They caught the light of the twin suns and scattered it into rainbows that danced across the landscape. Rivers of liquid silver wound between the structures. Gardens of geometric plants grew in perfect patterns. Everything was clean and sharp and beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Tay had seen pictures. The pictures did not prepare him for this. The shuttle landed on a platform of white stone. When the door opened, Tay stepped out into air that smelled like winter and electricity. A group of Valari waited for him at the edge of the platform. They stood perfectly still, their silver faces showing no expression at all. The leader of the group stepped forward. He was tall, even for a Valari. His silver skin was smooth and flawless. His eyes were the color of pale gold. The markings on his neck and arms glowed with a soft blue light that did not flicker or change. "I am Ambassador Theon," he said. His voice was calm and precise. "You are Kang Tay of the human vessel Horizon. Welcome to Valara Prime." Tay bowed his head slightly, the way he had practiced. "Thank you, Ambassador. I am honored by this invitation." Theon studied him for a long moment. His golden eyes moved across Ty's face like a scientist examining a new specimen. "You are smaller than I expected," he said finally. "Human images are often misleading." Tay was not sure how to respond to that. "I apologize for being small," he said. Something flickered in Theon's eyes. It might have been confusion. It might have been amusement. With Valari, it was impossible to tell. "Follow me," Theon said. "I will take you to your quarters. The bonding ceremony begins tomorrow. Tonight, there is a gathering to welcome guests. You will attend." It was not a question or a request. Tay nodded and followed. They walked through corridors of living crystal that hummed with soft vibrations. Tay felt the sound in his bones. Other Valari passed them, and every single one stopped to stare at Tay. Their golden eyes tracked him like he was an animal in a zoo. None of them spoke. None of them smiled. Their faces remained as blank as masks. Tay's quarters were in a tower overlooking a garden of crystal flowers. The room was beautiful and cold. The furniture was made of smooth white material that seemed to grow from the floor. There were no soft surfaces anywhere. No blankets, no pillows. Just hard, perfect shapes. Tay set down his bag and looked around. He already missed his small room on the horizon. A few hours later, he dressed in his best formal clothes and walked to the welcome gathering. The event was held in a great hall at the center of the city. Hundreds of Valari stood in small groups, talking in low voices. Their conversations sounded like music played too quietly to hear properly. Ty stood alone near a wall and tried to look calm. He was not calm. His heart was beating too fast. His palms were sweating. He kept reminding himself not to smile, because smiling would make him look like a threat. "You are the human." The voice came from his right. Tay turned and found himself looking at a female Valari. She was tall, like all of them, but her features were sharper, more angular. The markings on her skin glowed with a faint purple light that shifted as she moved. Her golden eyes studied him without blinking. "Yes," Tay said. "I am the human. My name is Kang Tai." "I know your name," she said. "I am Lyra. The bride is my sister." Tay bowed his head again. "It is an honor to meet you. I wish happiness to your sister and her partner." Lyra did not respond to his blessing. Instead, she tilted her head to one side and continued to study him. "You smile very much," she said. "Even now, when you are clearly nervous, your mouth keeps trying to curve upward. Why do humans do this?" Tay felt his face grow warm. He had not realized he was smiling. "It is a habit," he said. "Humans smile when they are happy, but also when they are nervous, or uncomfortable, or trying to be friendly." "That is confusing," Lyra said. "How do you know what a smile means if it can mean so many things?" "We look at the context," Tai said. "And the eyes? The eyes tell you what the smile really means." Lyra leaned closer. Her golden eyes locked onto his dark brown ones. The purple light in her markings flickered brighter for a moment. "Your eyes look frightened," she said, "but you are still smiling. Does this mean you broadcast your weakness openly for everyone to see?" Tay took a breath. He knew this was some kind of test. The Valari respected honesty, even when it was painful. "Yes," he said. "I am afraid. I am in a strange place surrounded by people who think my species is primitive and unstable. I am terrified of making a mistake. But I am still here. I am still smiling. Perhaps that means something too." Lyra was silent for a long moment. The purple light in her markings shifted to something closer to blue. "Interesting," she said finally. "You admit fear without shame. Among my people, this would be a great weakness. We learn to control our emotions before we can walk. We hide them so completely that even our markings do not betray us." She gestured to her own glowing patterns. "These lights are meant to show feeling. In ancient times, they told others what we felt without words. But we evolved past that. We learned to keep them still and silent. It took us thousands of years to achieve this control." Tay looked at the other Vilari in the hall. She was right. Their markings barely moved at all. Just a faint, steady glow that revealed nothing. "That sounds lonely," Tay said before he could stop himself. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. Her markings flickered again, just for a moment before returning to their steady blue. "Lonely," she repeated as if tasting a strange food. "That is an emotion word. You think hiding feelings causes loneliness?" "I think showing feelings creates connection," Tay said. "When I see someone smile, I want to smile too. When I see someone cry, I want to help them. Our emotions reach out to each other. They build bridges between people. If you hide them," he paused, searching for the right words. "If you hide them, maybe the bridges never get built." Lyra stared at him for so long that Tay began to worry he had said something terribly wrong. But then she spoke again, and her voice was different, softer. "You are strange, Kang Tay," she said. "You say foolish things, emotional things. My people would laugh at your ideas about bridges and feelings." She paused. "But you say them without fear. You wear your heart on the outside, where anyone can see it, where anyone can hurt it. And you do not seem to care." "I care," Tay said quietly. "I care very much. But hiding would not make me safer. It would just make me alone." Lyra's markings pulsed with a color Tay had not seen before, something between purple and gold. She turned away quickly, as if embarrassed. "The ceremony begins at sunrise," she said, her voice formal again. "Do not be late. Do not make noise. Do not embarrass yourself more than you already have." She walked away without looking back. Tay watched her go and realized he was smiling again. He also realized something else. For just a moment, when she turned away, Lyra had been smiling too. Tay woke before the suns rose. He had not slept well. The bed in his quarters was too hard, the air too cold, and his mind too busy with worried thoughts. He dressed in the formal clothes he had brought for the ceremony and walked to the great hall where the wedding would take place. The hall was even larger than the one from the night before. It was made entirely of living crystal that seemed to grow from the ground like a frozen forest. The walls reached up so high that Tay could not see the ceiling. They glowed with soft light that shifted slowly through colors, like a sunset that never ended. Hundreds of Valari were already there, standing in perfect rows on raised platforms around the edges of the hall. They wore robes of silver and white that matched their skin. They stood completely still, like beautiful statues, waiting for the ceremony to begin. Tay found his place on one of the observer platforms. He was the only human in the hall. He was also the only person who could not stand completely still. He kept shifting his weight from one foot to the other. He kept looking around at the crystal walls. He kept fighting the urge to smile nervously. A Valari near him gave him a look that clearly said, "Stop moving, you strange creature." Tay tried harder to be still. Then the music began. It was not really music, not the way humans understood music. It was vibration. The crystal walls themselves began to sing, producing harmonics that Tay could feel in his chest and his teeth and his bones. The sound was beautiful and strange, and a little bit frightening. It felt ancient. It felt like the planet itself was speaking. The crowd parted, and the bride walked into the center of the hall. She was Lyra's sister, and she was stunning. Her silver skin glowed brighter than anyone else's. Her markings pulsed with pure white light. She wore a robe of crystal threads that caught the light and scattered it like diamonds. She moved with perfect grace, each step exactly measured, exactly timed to the vibrations of the music. A moment later, the groom entered from the other side. He was tall and elegant, his markings glowing with the same white light. He moved toward his bride with steps that matched hers perfectly, like two halves of the same machine. They met in the center of the hall and faced each other. The Rathani began. Ty had studied this dance. He had watched videos of it. He had practiced the basic movements in his room, but nothing had prepared him for seeing it performed by two masters. The couple moved together without touching. Their arms swept through the air in patterns that told stories. Their bodies bent and turned in ways that seemed to defy physics. Every gesture had meaning. Every pause had purpose. They were not just dancing. They were speaking. They were making promises with their bodies that words could never express. The Valari audience watched in absolute silence. Their faces showed nothing. Their markings stayed dim and controlled. But Tay could feel something in the air, a kind of attention, a kind of reverence. This moment mattered to them in ways they would never show. Tay found his eyes filling with tears. The dance was beautiful. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The precision, the control, the perfect synchronization of two beings moving as one. But it was also empty, or not empty exactly, but missing something. He thought about his grandmother again. She had told him about her wedding dance so many times, how she and his grandfather had danced under paper lanterns in a village square, how they kept stepping on each other's feet, how they laughed so hard they could barely stand, how his grandfather spun her too fast and she fell into his arms and he kissed her right there in front of everyone. It was messy. It was imperfect. It was full of mistakes. It was also full of joy. The Rathani was perfect, but Ty could not see any joy in it. The bride and groom did not smile. They did not laugh. They did not look into each other's eyes with love. They looked at each other with focus, with concentration, with the careful attention of artists creating a masterpiece. Maybe that was enough for them. Maybe that was how Valari loved. Maybe joy was just another emotion they had learned to hide. But Tay felt sad watching them. The dance ended. The bride and groom stood facing each other, their hands finally touching, their markings glowing with matched light. The music faded into silence. No one clapped. No one cheered. The Valari simply bowed their heads for a moment, then began to move toward the next chamber where the feast would be held. Tay did not move right away. He stood on his platform and wiped his eyes, hoping no one had seen his tears. "You weep." Lyra was standing beside him. He had not heard her approach. "Yes," Tay said. He did not try to hide it. "Your sister's ceremony was very beautiful." Lyra studied his face. Her markings flickered with that strange purple-gold color again. "Humans cry when they are sad. Are you sad?" "No," Tay said. Humans also cry when something moves us deeply, when beauty touches our hearts, when we feel something so strongly that our bodies cannot contain it. Lyra was quiet for a moment. My people would say that is a weakness, that tears are a failure of emotional control. Maybe, Tay said, but I would rather feel too much than feel nothing at all. Lyra turned to look at the center of the hall, where her sister and new brother-in-law were receiving blessings from family members. You think we feel nothing, she said. It was not a question. I think you feel everything, Tay said gently. I think you feel so much that you had to learn to lock it away. I think your people are not cold at all. You are burning with emotions that you never let out. And I think that must be exhausting. Lyra's markings flared bright for just a second. Then she controlled them again. You know nothing about us, she said. But her voice was not angry. It was something else. Something Tay could not name. You are right, Tay said. I know nothing. But I am here to learn. Will you teach me? Lyra looked at him for a long time. Then she turned and began walking toward the feast hall. Come, she said over her shoulder. You will sit with my family. Try not to do anything too human. Tay smiled and followed her. This time he did not try to hide it. The feast was long and formal. Tay sat near the end of a crystal table surrounded by Valari, who barely looked at him. The food was strange but not unpleasant. Some kind of fruit that tasted like flowers and honey. Meat that was served raw and cold, but melted on his tongue. Drinks that sparkled with light and made his thoughts feel clearer. No one spoke to him much, but Lyra sat across from him, and sometimes he caught her watching him. Her markings flickered whenever he did something particularly human, like using the wrong utensil or making a sound of appreciation when the food was good. Once, when he laughed quietly at his own mistake, her markings turned bright gold for just a moment. She did not smile. But she did not look away either. Tay began to think that maybe beneath all that silver skin and careful control, the Valari were not so different from humans after all. Maybe they just needed someone to show them that emotions were not weakness. Maybe they needed someone to remind them how to feel. Or maybe he was just a foolish human, seeing things that were not there. Either way, he was glad he came. The feast continued into the night. Tay had lost track of how many courses had been served. The Valari ate slowly and deliberately, treating each bite as a meditation. They did not talk much. When they did speak, it was in low, measured tones about topics that Tay could barely follow. Politics, science, mathematics. Nothing personal, nothing emotional. Tay was tired. The crystal chair was hard under his body. The air was still cold. But he kept his back straight and his face calm. He was representing all of humanity. He would not complain. Lyra sat across from him, as she had all evening. She had not spoken to him since the ceremony, but he caught her watching him sometimes. Her golden eyes tracked his movements with scientific curiosity. Her markings stayed carefully controlled, showing nothing. Tay was watching her markings flicker faintly when the first tremor hit. It was small at first, just a vibration in the crystal floor. Tay thought it was part of the music that still played softly in the background, but then the vibration grew stronger. The crystal walls began to hum with a sound that was not beautiful. It was wrong, harsh, like metal scraping against metal. The Valari around him went still. Their golden eyes moved to the ceiling. Their markings dimmed as they focused their attention on the problem. Resonance cascade, someone said calmly. The harmonic stabilizers have failed. Tay did not know what that meant, but he could see the effects. The crystal walls were shaking now. Cracks appeared in the ceiling, spreading like lightning frozen in glass. Pieces of crystal began to fall. The Valari did not panic. They did not scream or run. Instead, they stood calmly and began to calculate. Tay could almost see them thinking, their minds working through equations, figuring out the safest path to the exits. But something was wrong. They were moving too slowly. The harmonics, Tay realized. The sound was affecting them. The Valari were so connected to the crystal vibrations of their world that when those vibrations went wrong, it disrupted their thinking. They were like computers receiving bad data. Their movements became jerky and uncertain. Their eyes lost focus. Lyra stood up from her chair. She turned toward the nearest exit, but her steps were unsteady. She stumbled and caught herself on the table. Tay did not think. He did not calculate. He moved. He was across the table before he knew what he was doing. His hands grabbed Lyra's arm. His eyes swept the hall, looking for danger. A massive crystal shard was falling from the ceiling, directly above where Lyra stood. It would hit her in less than 2 seconds. Tay pulled her hard, throwing them both toward a support arch built into the wall. They hit the ground together just as the crystal shard crashed into the floor where Lyra had been standing. It shattered into 1,000 pieces that flew through the air like knives. Tay covered Lyra with his body without thinking. He felt small pieces of crystal bite into his back and arms. Pain flared hot and sharp, but Lyra was safe beneath him. That was all that mattered. The shaking continued for another 30 seconds. More crystal fell. More cracks spread through the walls, but the support arch held firm, protecting them from the worst of it. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The harmonics returned to normal. The crystal walls stopped shaking. The surviving lights glowed steady again. Tay lifted himself off Lyra and looked down at her. Her golden eyes were wide. Her markings were pulsing with colors he had never seen before. Fast, chaotic colors that shifted every second. Fear, confusion, something else he could not name. "Are you hurt?" Tay asked. His voice was rough. His back was bleeding. He did not care. Lyra stared at him. "You move so fast," she whispered. "I did not calculate the danger in time. The harmonics disrupted my processing. I would have died. But you moved before I finished my first calculation." "I did not calculate," Tay said. "I just moved." "How?" Tay sat back on his heels and winced at the pain in his back. "I do not know. Humans do not calculate in emergencies. We react. We feel danger and we move towards safety, or toward the people we want to protect." "You wanted to protect me?" Tay looked at her. She was still lying on the ground, her silver hair spread around her like a halo, her markings still pulsing with uncontrolled emotion. She looked fragile, scared, human almost. "Yes," he said simply. "I wanted to protect you." Lyra sat up slowly. She looked at the place where she had been standing. The crystal shard had gouged a deep hole in the floor. If Tay had been 1 second slower, it would have killed her. "You are injured," she said. Her voice had changed, softer, almost gentle. "It is not serious," Tay said, though he was not entirely sure that was true. Lyra reached out and touched his arm, where a piece of crystal had left a shallow cut. Her fingers were cool against his skin. Her markings flickered at the contact. "You bled for me," she said. "You did not even know me. You thought my people were cold and logical. You knew I looked down on humans. And still, you threw yourself between me and death. Without thought, without calculation, without hesitation." Tay did not know what to say, so he just shrugged, and then regretted it when the movement pulled at his wounds. Around them, the other Valari were beginning to recover. They moved through the damaged hall, helping the injured, assessing the damage. Their movements were precise again, their minds clear now that the harmonics had stabilized. Ambassador Theon appeared at Tay's side. His silver face was as calm as ever, but his markings showed the faintest flicker of something. Interest, perhaps, or surprise. "I saw what you did," Theon said. "You moved before any of us could react. How did you do this?" "Humans do not calculate in emergencies," Tay repeated. "We just move." Theon was silent for a moment. "We have always believed that calculation was superior to instinct, that logic would always be faster than emotion." He paused. "Perhaps we were wrong." He turned and walked away without another word. Lyra helped Tay to his feet. Her hand stayed on his arm longer than necessary. Her markings had calmed now, but they were not the cold blue they had been before. They glowed with a warm, purple light that reminded Tay of sunset. "Come," she said. "I will take you to the medical center. They will treat your wounds." "Thank you," Tay said. "Do not thank me," Lyra replied. "I am the one who should be thanking you. You saved my life, Kangte. You bled for me. Among my people, this creates a debt that cannot be easily paid." Tay smiled at her, his nervous smile, his scared smile, his glad-to-be-alive smile. "I do not want payment," he said. "I just want you to be safe." Lyra stared at him for a long moment. Then something strange happened. She smiled back. It was a small smile, just a slight curve of her silver lips. Her people would probably be horrified if they saw it, but to Tay it was the most beautiful thing he had seen since arriving on Valara Prime. "You are very strange, human," Lyra said softly. "So I have been told," Tay replied. They walked together through the damaged hall, her hand still on his arm, her markings still glowing with that warm purple light. Behind them, the other Valari watched and wondered. Something had changed tonight. Something they did not have words for yet, but it was only the beginning. The Valari medical technology was impressive. Within an hour, the cuts on Ty's back and arms had been sealed by some kind of light that felt warm and tingly. The doctor, a tall Valari with steady blue markings, told him he would have small scars but no permanent damage. "You are lucky," the doctor said in a flat voice. "Crystal shards have killed many of our own. Your species is more durable than we believed." Tay was not sure if that was a compliment. He thanked the doctor anyway and left the medical center. It was night now. The twin moons of Valara Prime hung in the sky like two great eyes watching over the world. Tay found his way to an observation deck at the top of his tower. He needed air. He needed quiet. He needed time to think about what had happened. The deck looked out over the crystal city. The towers glowed softly in the moonlight. The silver rivers reflected the stars. It was beautiful and peaceful, a sharp contrast to the chaos of the ceremony hall. Tay stood at the railing and breathed deep. The cold air filled his lungs. The silence filled his mind. He thought about Lyra, about the fear in her eyes when she realized how close she had come to death, about the way her markings had flickered out of control, showing emotions she usually kept hidden, about the smile she had given him, small and uncertain, and so very un-Valari. He thought about what he had done, throwing himself in front of danger without thinking, getting hurt for someone he barely knew, someone who had spent their first meeting telling him that humans broadcast their weaknesses openly. Why had he done it? He did not have a good answer. It was not logic. It was not calculation. It was just instinct. He saw danger and he moved. He saw someone who needed help and he helped. Maybe that was what it meant to be human, to feel so strongly that you acted before you thought, to care about others even when it made no logical sense, to throw yourself between someone and death just because you could not stand to see them hurt. The Valari would probably call it foolishness, emotional instability, a failure of evolution. Tay called it love. Not romantic love, not yet, but something like it. The kind of love that made you protect strangers, the kind that made you bleed for people you had just met, the kind that built bridges between hearts, even hearts that claimed to feel nothing. "You are thinking loudly." Tay turned. Lyra stood at the entrance to the observation deck. Her silver skin glowed in the moonlight. Her markings pulsed with soft purple light. She looked uncertain, which was strange for a Valari. "I did not know you could hear thoughts," Tay said. "I cannot," Lyra replied, "but I can read faces. Yours shows everything you feel. Right now you are thinking deep thoughts, heavy thoughts." She walked to the railing and stood beside him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "I have studied humans for many years," Lyra finally said. "I read your history. I watched your entertainment. I analyzed your behavior. I thought I understood you." She paused. "I did not understand anything." Tay looked at her. "What do you mean?" "Today you moved to save me without any calculation. You put yourself in danger for a stranger who had not been kind to you, a stranger from a species that looks down on yours." Her markings flickered brighter. "I have been trying to understand why. I have run every equation I know. None of them give me an answer." "There is no equation for it," Tay said softly. "Then what is there?" Tay thought about how to explain. He looked up at the moons and searched for the right words. "Humans call it empathy," he said. "It is the ability to feel what others feel. When I saw you in danger, I felt your fear as if it were my own. When I thought you might die, I felt pain as if I were the one dying. I did not decide to save you. I had to save you, because in that moment, your life felt as important as my own." Lyra was silent for a long time. Her markings shifted through colors that Tay was beginning to recognize. Purple for confusion, gold for curiosity, blue for calm thinking. This empathy, she said slowly, does it happen with all humans? Do you feel the emotions of everyone you meet? Not always, Tay admitted. It is stronger with some people than others. With people we love, it is very strong. But even with strangers, there is always some connection, some awareness that they are living beings with their own hopes and fears and dreams. And this does not exhaust you? Carrying the feelings of everyone around you? Tay smiled his tired smile. Yes, it exhausts us terribly. That is why humans sleep so much. That is why we need friends and family to support us. That is why we laugh and cry and make art and tell stories. We are always overflowing with emotions, and we need ways to let them out. Lyra turned to face him fully. Her golden eyes caught the moonlight and seemed to glow from within. My people suppressed empathy thousands of years ago, she said. We decided it was inefficient, a waste of mental energy. We trained ourselves to feel nothing for others, to see ourselves as individuals, separate and alone. And are you happy? The question hung in the air. Lyra's markings flickered wildly for a moment before she controlled them. I do not know, she said quietly. I do not know what happiness feels like. I have words for it, definitions, but I have never felt it. Tay felt his heart break a little. All that beauty, all that intelligence, all that potential for feeling, locked away behind walls of logic and control. An entire species that had forgotten how to be happy. Would you like to learn? He asked. Lyra looked at him. Her markings pulsed with that strange gold-purple color that seemed to appear only when she talked to him. Learn what? To feel, to be happy, to connect with others in ways that equations cannot describe. I do not think it is possible. My people have evolved past such things. Maybe, Tay said, or maybe you just forgot. Forgetting is not the same as losing. The ability might still be there, somewhere deep inside, waiting to be remembered. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised both of them. She reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were cool and smooth against his warm skin. Her touch was gentle, almost hesitant. Her markings flared bright with colors that shifted too fast to name. Teach me, she whispered. I do not know if I can learn. I do not know if my people will approve. But I want to try. I want to understand what made you jump between me and death today. I want to know what it feels like to care about a stranger. Tay held her hand gently. He could feel her pulse, fast and uncertain. So different from the calm Valari she pretended to be. It starts with this, he said, with touching, with connecting, with letting someone past your walls, just a little. It feels scary at first, dangerous, but it is also the most wonderful thing in the universe. Lyra's markings settled into a warm, steady gold. I am scared, she admitted. Good, Tay said and smiled at her. That means you are starting to feel. They stood together on the observation deck, hand in hand, watching the moons rise higher in the alien sky. Two strangers from different worlds, learning to build a bridge between them. It was not logical. It was not efficient. It made no sense at all, but it felt right. And sometimes Tay knew feeling was more important than thinking. The final night of the wedding celebration arrived. The great hall had been repaired, the crystal walls restored to their perfect beauty. No sign of the resonance cascade remained. The Valari were good at fixing things. They were good at making the world look perfect. Tonight was the Rathani Velos, the communal dance that honored the newlyweds. Every guest was expected to participate. Every guest would take the floor and move to the harmonic vibrations of the crystal walls. It was a tradition that stretched back 10,000 years. Ty planned to watch from the sidelines. He stood near the edge of the hall, dressed in his formal clothes, trying to be invisible. He had practiced basic Valari dance movements in his room. He knew the steps, but knowing and doing were very different things. The Valari dance was about precision and control. Every movement calculated to the millisecond. Every gesture perfectly aligned with the music. Tay could not do that. He was human. He was messy and imperfect and full of emotions that showed on his face. If he danced, he would embarrass himself. He would embarrass humanity. It was better to stay quiet and watch. The hall filled with Valari in their silver and white robes. They arranged themselves in careful patterns across the floor. Their markings glowed with controlled blue light. They looked like statues waiting to come to life. The music began. The crystal walls sang their ancient harmonics. The Valari began to move. It was beautiful, as everything Valari was beautiful. Hundreds of bodies moving in perfect synchronization, arms sweeping in identical arcs, feet stepping in identical rhythms. They were not individuals anymore. They were one organism, one pattern, one expression of mathematical beauty. Tay watched and felt like an outsider. He did not belong here. He never would. Then he saw Lyra. She was walking toward him through the crowd of dancers. She moved against the flow, her steps out of sync with everyone else's. Her markings pulsed with bright gold light. Her face showed something that looked almost like determination. She stopped in front of him and extended her hand. The hall went silent. The dancers froze mid-movement. Every golden eye in the room turned to look at the strange scene unfolding at the edge of the hall. A Valari had never invited an outsider to dance. Never in 10,000 years. "Dance with me," Lyra said. Tay stared at her hand. His heart pounded in his chest. "I cannot dance like your people," he said quietly. "I will ruin it. I will embarrass you." "I know," Lyra said. "Dance with me anyway." Tay looked at the hundreds of Valari watching them. Their faces showed nothing, but he could feel their judgment, their confusion, their disapproval. This strange human was about to contaminate their sacred tradition with his clumsy, emotional movements. He looked back at Lyra. Her golden eyes were steady. Her hand did not waver. He thought about his grandmother, about her stories of dancing until sunrise, about falling and stumbling and laughing with joy, about the kind of dancing that was not perfect but was real. Tay took Lyra's hand. A murmur went through the crowd. The sound was soft but unmistakable. Shock, outrage, curiosity. Lyra led him to the center of the hall. The dancers parted around them like water around a stone. They stood together in a circle of empty space, surrounded by silver faces and golden eyes. The music started again. The crystal walls sang their harmonics, but Tay could not follow them. The rhythms were too complex. The patterns were too precise. He would never be able to move like a Valari, so he did not try. He closed his eyes and remembered his grandmother's hands on his shoulders. He remembered her voice in his ear. "Feel the music, Tay. Do not count it. Do not calculate it. Let it move through you like water. Dance like no one is watching." He began to move. His movements were not precise. They were not calculated. They did not follow the harmonic patterns of the crystal walls. He moved the way his grandmother had taught him, from the heart, from the soul, from some place deep inside that had no name. He moved like a human. Gasps echoed through the hall. Markings flickered on silver faces. This was wrong. This was chaotic. This was everything the Valari had spent 10,000 years learning to control. But then something changed. Lyra began to move with him. At first, she tried to match his movements with Valari precision. She calculated his rhythm and tried to synchronize with it, but his rhythm kept changing. His movements were unpredictable. There was no pattern to follow. So she stopped calculating. She closed her eyes like he had. She let the music wash over her without trying to analyze it. She let her body move without telling it what to do. And for the first time in her life, Lyra danced without thinking. Her movements became softer, more fluid, less perfect but more alive. Her markings exploded with color, not controlled blue or calm purple. Wild colors, bright colors, colors that shifted and flowed like fire and water and sunlight all mixed together. The other Valari stopped dancing entirely. They stood and watched as one of their own transformed before their eyes. Tay opened his eyes and saw Lyra dancing. Really dancing. Her silver face was turned up toward the crystal ceiling. Her arms swept through the air with abandon. She was not performing. She was not calculating. She was feeling. He reached out and took her hands. They danced together. Their movements did not match. They stepped on each other's feet. They bumped into each other. They made 100 mistakes that any Valari child would be ashamed of. But they also laughed. Lyra laughed. The sound burst out of her like something that had been trapped for 1,000 years. It was a strange sound. Rough and unpracticed, but it was real. Her markings pulsed with pure gold light. Her eyes shone with tears that she did not try to hide. She was feeling joy, maybe for the first time in her life. Tay laughed with her. He spun her around and she stumbled and he caught her. She pulled him close and then pushed him away and pulled him close again. They were not dancing anymore. They were playing. They were celebrating. They were being alive together. The crystal hall began to change. The walls, which had always sung in precise mathematical harmonics, began to produce new sounds. Strange sounds. Wild sounds. The crystal was responding to their movements, amplifying their chaotic joy into something beautiful. The other Valari watched in amazement. Their markings flickered with colors they had never shown before. Buried emotions, locked away for generations, stirred in their ancient hearts. The music reached a peak. Tay and Lyra spun together one last time and stopped, breathing hard, holding each other's hands. The hall was silent. Lyra looked at Tay. Her silver face was inches from his. Her markings glowed with warm, steady gold. Her eyes held something that needed no translation. "This is joy," she whispered. "This is what you tried to explain. This is what my people forgot." "Yes," Tay said softly. "This is joy." Around them, the crystal walls continued to sing their new song. The other Valari stood frozen, their minds struggling to process what they had witnessed. But none of that mattered to Tay. All that mattered was the alien woman in front of him, learning to feel again after 10,000 years of silence. All that mattered was the bridge they had built between their hearts. All that mattered was the dance. The morning after the dance, Tay was summoned to meet with Ambassador Theon. He walked through the crystal corridors with his heart beating fast. He was sure he had ruined everything. The dance had been beautiful for him and Lyra, but the Valari probably saw it as an insult. A human had corrupted their sacred tradition. He had made one of their own lose control in front of everyone. He was probably going to be sent home in disgrace. Maybe worse. The ambassador's chambers were at the top of the tallest tower in the city. Tay climbed the final steps and found Theon standing by a window, looking out at the crystal landscape below. "Kang Tay," Theon said without turning around. "Come, stand with me." Tay walked to the window and stood beside the ambassador. He waited for the lecture, for the condemnation, for the cold Valeri disapproval. Instead, Theon asked a question. "Do you know how old our civilization is?" Tay blinked. "Very old. Thousands of years." 100,000 years, Theon said. "We were building starships when your ancestors were learning to make fire. We had conquered emotion when you were still living in caves. We thought we had achieved perfection." He turned to face Tay. His silver face was calm as always, but his markings showed something new, a faint flicker of gold that he did not try to hide. "For 10,000 generations, we believed that emotion was weakness. That feeling was the enemy of progress. We suppressed everything that made us alive, and we called it evolution." He paused. "Last night I watched you dance with Lyra. I watched her lose control. I watched her laugh and cry and feel joy for the first time in her life. And do you know what I felt?" Tay shook his head. "Envy," Theon said quietly. "I felt envy. I wanted to feel what she felt. I wanted to dance without calculation. I wanted to laugh until my body shook, and I realized that I did not know how." He turned back to the window. His markings flickered between gold and blue, as if fighting an internal battle. The council met this morning to discuss what happened. Many of them wanted to punish Lyra. They said she had shamed our people with her emotional display. They wanted to send you away and pretend this never happened. Tay felt his stomach drop. "And what did you decide?" Theon was silent for a long moment. Then he smiled. It was a small smile, awkward and unpracticed, but it was real. "We decided something else," he said. "We decided that maybe, after 100,000 years, we have been wrong. We decided that perhaps the humans are not primitive after all. Perhaps you have something we lost, something we need." He reached into his robe and pulled out a small crystal. It glowed with soft light. "This is an official invitation," Theon said. "The council wants a human cultural attaché to remain on Valara Prime permanently. Someone to teach us what we have forgotten. Someone to remind us how to feel." He held out the crystal. "They want you, Kang Tay." Tay stared at the glowing crystal. Me? Why me? Because you saved Lyra without thinking. Because you danced without calculation. Because you feel so much that it overflows from your eyes and your voice and your body. Because when our halls sang new frequencies last night, it was your joy that created them. Theon pressed the crystal into Tay's hand. You are exactly what we need. Tay looked at the crystal. It was warm in his palm, pulsing with gentle light. A permanent position on an alien world. A chance to change history. A chance to stay near Lyra. I accept, he said. Theon nodded. For just a moment, his markings glowed fully gold. Later that day, Tay went to the shuttle bay to collect his things. He would not be leaving on the transport. He would stay. He would teach. He would build bridges between hearts that had been closed for 10,000 generations. Lyra was waiting for him at the shuttle bay entrance. She looked different today. Her silver skin still glowed in the sunlight. Her features were still sharp and beautiful. But something had changed in her eyes. They were softer, warmer, more alive. Her markings pulsed with steady gold light. She was not trying to control them anymore. I heard you are staying, she said. I am, Tay replied. Good. She walked closer to him. My people have a new phrase now. It started spreading this morning, after the dance. In our language, it means to move like a human. Tay raised his eyebrows. Is that an insult? Lyra smiled. Her second real smile ever. It was still small and uncertain, but it was growing. The elders think it is an insult. They use it to describe failure, loss of control, emotional breakdown. And the younger generation? Lyra's smile grew wider. The younger generation is not so sure. Some of them think it might be a compliment. Some of them are practicing in secret, trying to move without calculation, trying to feel without fear. She stepped even closer. Her hand reached out and took his. You have started something, Kang Tai, she said softly. Something that cannot be stopped. For 10,000 years we locked away our hearts. You came to a wedding and showed us what we had lost. You danced in our sacred hall and reminded us what it means to be alive. Tay squeezed her hand. I was just being human. I know, Lyra said. That is exactly why it matters. They stood together in the shuttle bay, hand in hand, while ships arrived and departed around them. Two people from different worlds learning to understand each other, learning to feel together. Tai thought about his grandmother again. She would have loved this. She would have loved seeing her clumsy grandson teaching an entire alien species how to dance, how to laugh, how to feel joy without shame. She always told him to dance like the universe was watching. Now the universe was watching, and Tay was going to show it something beautiful. He looked at Lyra, at her golden eyes and silver skin and warm golden markings. He thought about all the Valari out there, starting to remember what they had forgotten. He thought about the bridges being built, the walls coming down, the hearts opening after 10,000 years of silence. He thought about what it meant to be human, not the logic, not the technology, not the cleverness or the ambition, the real thing, the messy, emotional, beautiful thing that made humans who they were. The thing that could not be calculated or controlled, the thing that overflowed from their eyes and voices and bodies, the thing called love. Come, Lyra said, pulling gently on his hand. There is much work to do. Many of my people want to learn. They are scared, but they are curious. They need someone to show them the way. Tay smiled at her, his nervous smile, his happy smile, his hopeful smile. Then let us teach them, he said. Together they walked out of the shuttle bay and into the crystal city. Above them, the twin suns shone down on a world that was beginning to change. Around them, silver faces watched with golden eyes that were starting to learn new expressions. Somewhere in the distance, the crystal walls began to sing a new song. It was not the old harmonic patterns. It was something different, something wild and chaotic and alive. It was joy, and it was only the beginning.